Alex Eala exposes tennis double standards. Sabalenka furious. A rising underdog shakes the sport, and the world thinks the queen of women's tennis snapped. Nobody expected the quiet Filipino teen to ignite one of the loudest debates in modern women's tennis. What started as a breakthrough run quickly turned into whispers of favoritism, fairness, and power. Was this just another viral exaggeration, or did Ayala's words expose a truth the sport wasn't ready to face? Nobody expected the name Alex Eala to linger this long on the tennis world's tongue. For years, she was spoken softly. A junior champion, a promising left-hander, a girl from a country rarely mentioned in elite tennis conversations. Respectful nods, polite praise, then silence. That was the pattern. Until it wasn't. One tournament changed everything. Eala didn't just win matches, she disrupted expectations. Each victory felt like an interruption, a reminder that the script tennis had written for itself was no longer holding. Commentators began stumbling over the same phrase. She doesn't play like she should. But what did that even mean? As her matches stacked up, so did the murmurs. She wasn't supposed to outlast power hitters. She wasn't supposed to command center court attention. And she definitely wasn't supposed to force conversations about fairness, visibility, and opportunity. Yet, there she was. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Some insiders praised her discipline. Others quietly dismissed her success as temporary. But the tension didn't live in locker rooms. It lived online. Fans dissected every handshake, every interview pause, every smile that lingered a second too long. Then came the question that would follow her everywhere. Why are some players celebrated for the same traits others are criticized for? Eala never raised her voice. That was the most dangerous part. She spoke calmly, thoughtfully, but calm words can still cut deep when they point at uncomfortable truths. When asked about pressure, she didn't complain, she reflected. When asked about recognition, she didn't accuse, she observed. And that observation struck a nerve, because tennis loves its narratives, power, dominance, familiar champions, and when someone doesn't fit neatly into that story, the system doesn't always know how to respond. Some players are fearless, others are overconfident, some are passionate, others are emotional. Same actions, different labels. Eala didn't accuse anyone directly, she didn't name names, but she didn't need to. The moment her words circulated, fans connected the dots themselves, and when they did, one name kept surfacing in comment sections and headlines: Aryna Sabalenka, the reigning powerhouse, the symbol of modern dominance, the player everything about the sport seemed built to celebrate. Was it fair to link them? Maybe not. But fairness, ironically, was the very thing under debate. As Eala continued winning, the silence around her transformed into scrutiny. And scrutiny, in tennis, is often the first step toward conflict. She hadn't challenged a player yet. She had challenged a system. And systems don't like being exposed. Tennis has always insisted it treats everyone the same. Same courts, same rules, same scorelines. On the surface, it looks equal, clean, objective. But beneath that surface, players know the truth is messier. Some errors are forgiven as aggressive tennis. Others are labeled immaturity. Some celebrations are passion. Others are disrespect. And when young players from outside the sport's traditional power center speak, their words often land heavier than intended. Eala felt it. She didn't storm press rooms or post emotional rants. She simply answered questions honestly. And honesty, when it doesn't flatter the system, is often reframed as complaint. Fans noticed the difference in language immediately. When established stars spoke about pressure, they were praised for vulnerability. When Eala spoke about opportunity gaps, she was told to stay patient. When others demanded respect, they were strong. When she hinted at fairness, she was reading too much into it. That contrast became impossible to ignore. Online threads began comparing interviews line by line. Same sentiments, different receptions. And slowly, a narrative formed, not because Eala created it, but because people recognized themselves in it. The idea of double standards isn't explosive because it's new, it's explosive because it's familiar. And once that door opens, it doesn't close easily. Suddenly, every match involving top players was viewed through a new lens. Every comment was reinterpreted. Every loss was framed as entitlement. Every win as inevitability. Sabalenka's name kept appearing, not because she had said anything directly, but because she represented the peak of the system. Power, privilege, protection, everything Eala was supposedly pushing against. Was that fair? Maybe not, but narratives don't wait for fairness. Fans began arguing not about tennis, but about respect. Who earns it, who receives it automatically, who has to fight twice as hard for half as much recognition. And in the middle of it all was a young player who never asked to start a war. Eala didn't say the sport was broken. She said it could be better. To some, that was inspiring. To others, it was threatening. Because when someone exposes a double standard, they're not just talking about tennis. They're talking about power. And power always listens, even when it pretends not to. Sabalenka didn't respond, and that silence spoke louder than words. In today's sports culture, silence is rarely interpreted as neutrality. It becomes a canvas, and fans paint whatever emotion they want onto it. Confidence becomes arrogance, focus becomes anger, restraint becomes fury. Headlines escalated fast. What started as fan speculation hardened into certainty. Sabalenka furious, Sabalenka offended, Sabalenka responds without saying a word. The truth was far less dramatic, but drama doesn't survive on truth alone. Every clip of Sabalenka's intensity was replayed. Her on-court frustration, something fans once admired, was now framed as personal. Her competitive fire, once celebrated, was suddenly linked to entitlement. And yet, she never mentioned Eala. That didn't stop the storm. The tennis world split into sides that didn't technically exist. Supporters of the underdog versus defenders of the champion. Comments became accusations. Accusations became certainty. Eala watched it unfold quietly. She hadn't accused Sabalenka of anything. She hadn't challenged her status. But narratives don't require permission from their subjects. They require attention. And attention was everywhere. Sabalenka, used to criticism about emotions and intensity, now faced something different, being cast as the symbol of a problem she never publicly acknowledged. Whether she deserved that role didn't matter anymore. The story had chosen her. And once a story chooses its characters, escaping it becomes nearly impossible. The backlash didn't target one person. It spread outward, like a ripple. Eala faced questions she never asked for. Sabalenka faced assumptions she never made. Fans turned every press conference into a trial, every answer into evidence. Neutrality vanished. Some accused Eala of playing the victim. Others accused Sabalenka of benefiting from favoritism she never requested. Both accusations missed the point, but both gained traction. That's how online outrage works. Complexity doesn't survive, emotion does. The louder the discourse grew, the quieter the players became, because speaking now meant being misquoted, clarifying meant escalating, and silence, again, would be interpreted as guilt. Tennis wasn't talking about forehands or footwork anymore. It was talking about fairness, and fairness is uncomfortable because it forces everyone to look inward. When the dust settled slightly, one truth remained clear. Alex Eala never attacked anyone. Aryna Sabalenka never attacked Eala. What existed between them wasn't rivalry, it was projection. Eala's comments were about structure, opportunity, perception. Sabalenka's career was built on power, resilience, and surviving constant scrutiny about her emotions. In reality, both players had more in common than fans wanted to admit. But conflict is easier than nuance. And so the narrative continued, not because it was accurate, but because it was compelling. In the end, tennis moved on. It always does. New tournaments, new controversies, new names. But something lingered. A question that didn't disappear with the headlines. If a young player can expose discomfort simply by speaking calmly, what does that say about the system? And if silence can be framed as fury, what does that say about how we consume sports today? Alex Eala kept playing. Aryna Sabalenka kept winning. No official feud, no public confrontation, just a moment where the sport accidentally looked in the mirror. And maybe that's why it felt so explosive, because the most dangerous truths aren't shouted, they're quietly noticed.